Hello and welcome to Landon Live. Tonight we have the Executive Director of the International Venhaven Ventriloquist Convention, Mark Wade. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, Landon, good to see you, buddy. Welcome here. I'm glad to be on with you tonight from sunny Florida.
We're glad to have you here. Now let's just go ahead and get into it. How did you become a ventriloquist?
Well, actually, it was a hobby that got out of hand. That's what I tell people. I started my career as an elementary school teacher, taught for 3 or 4 years. And in the summertime, I had the summers off so I could do showcases for fairs and whatnot. So I was doing some showcases, and an agent saw me and said, "You're better than the guys we've been hiring. Have you ever thought about doing it full time?" I said, "Not till now." So I took a leap of faith. I left my teaching career, left my insurance, left all my 401k and all that, and became a full-time control. I was a leap of faith back in those days. I took it and became a full-time ventriloquist. And the guy said, "I got some new people I want you to work with. It's a new act called Reba McEntire. Can you open for her?" I said, "Sure, I can do that." And
Man.
we had another new one. It was Garth Brooks. So I got in with Garth Brooks and Reba McEntire, did those for 8 years, traveled the fairs and state fairs, all that circuit that we had. So yeah, it was kind of, that's what led into it. But my teaching background was in elementary education.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of opened the door because I had a lot of friends in education. It opened the door up for me doing elementary school assembly programs. So I ended up being like the kid show guy for years
Wow.
and years. And so I
That is,
did on the average about 350 or so elementary schools in 9 months.
I'm sure. How did that affect your writing for a school show? Did that make it easier because you knew what they were looking for? Or?
Yeah, a little bit because number one, schools in the early days, when back in the 70s when I started, they didn't care if you had a message as long as it was fun for the kids. They thought it was a break in the action for the kids. So that was fine. So we did some shows that way. But I thought I need to do more with this. So I got the curriculum guides for social studies and reading and math and all those things. So I built my show around the curriculum guide. So when they said, "Well, what value is your show?" I said, "Well, I wrote on your curriculum guide for this and this and this and this and this." And I had all the points there. So I mean, it was like a teaching lesson with ventriloquism.
Wow, I'm sure that made you a lot more marketable
Well,
than anyone else doing school
you
shows.
couldn't,
Yeah.
couldn't say it's not worth it because it was
Yeah.
worth it. I was helping them make see, when you teach elementary school, you have to make so many minutes per subject each week.
Mhm.
Like so many
Sure.
of math, so many reading, so many science, whatnot. And when I did my show, my shows, it could be on math, it could be on reading, it could be a lot of different things. It helped them make up those minutes that they needed.
Mhm.
So I was actually helping them make their time instead of taking time away from the
Huh.
curriculum.
That's an interesting thought. I'm curious, when you started out and you were opening for Reba and Garth, was your act family friendly? Was it more for adult? What was your act like when you
It had
started?
to be family friendly and very
Okay,
clean, and that's all I've ever done anyway.
mm,
I've not done really anything other than that.
sure.
So it was kind of middle of the road, and
Mm,
that's why I came up with the baby cry that I did for all those years in the show because I didn't want to take an extra puppet on the road with me. So I did one puppet and the baby cry and something else. It might have been a magic trick. But anyway, like I said, I had 20 minutes. I had to get it all in 20 minutes. I had to break the ice with the crowd and get them warmed up. So I had 20 minutes because the big acts didn't want to come out to what's called a cold house.
sure.
And also they told me you can be funny, but not funnier than the big guys because we're paying them a lot of money. We're paying you this much money compared to what they're making. So
Yeah.
you could do something. And it said if
Oh,
I went on too long and was too funny, it would cut my time the next show.
wow, that's scary. You're walking on a tightrope there.
I was doing the West Virginia State Fair and I was really cooking that night. I didn't watch my time. I was over by about 3 minutes. The agent walks out where they couldn't see it and he goes, "That's it, you're done." So I
Oh
said, "Good night,
man.
folks, doing great," and walked off the stage. And the next show, I was down to 15 minutes instead of 20.
Oh man.
So you really had to hone your act and know exactly how many minutes you were doing.
Wow. Yeah, that'll teach you to learn your act in a short amount of time. Wow. So I'm curious, the baby cry, when did that, was that like an aha moment when you came up with that? Well, like when did you need it, like last minute? What was the story behind that?
I could do a fairly decent falsetto.
Okay.
I heard of people doing the baby cry, but I never had seen anybody. So I did with a kind of a cartoonish voice.
Mhm.
and I took a towel out of the hotel I was staying in, wrapped it up on stage, and used somebody out of the audience for audience participation, and just did the baby cries, the cough sounds like. One of those kind of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow, that's super cool. So you also do magic, or you do some
Well,
magic in
when
your
I
act?
did the school shows, I did a little magic. The other reason I did magic was to break up and give my voice a rest between the characters. I usually started with a
Mhm.
puppet, did a event specially in between, which was either baby cry or distant voice or something like that, and finished with a strong puppet at the end. So I anchored the show with the puppet at the beginning and puppet at the end, and let the middle be taken care of with maybe one magic trick that I brought along. It'd be a die box. It could be a lot of different things, but that's
Sure.
how I balanced it out.
Okay, neat. What was your first character?
My first character was a parrot named Foster. I had done a trade show in Atlanta, Georgia for a company called Foster Air Data Systems. It was a crow. It was one of the Bill Boley crows.
Okay.
And their motto was, "We get you." They were making navigational equipment. They said, "We get you there straight as the crow flies." So I asked Mr. Foster if I could use his name. So I called the bird Foster,
Mhm.
and used him in the fairs and things I was doing. But I wanted to make sure
Mhm.
that Mr. Foster was okay with that, so it was all right. So I
Sure.
went ahead and used it.
Sure. Well, that's awesome. I'm curious because on IVS we see a lot of you, and you're always posting things on ways to make your act better and ways to you make a puppet your own. Could you talk a little bit about what makes a good puppet?
I think a good puppet has to be unique, and I think the cheeky boy thing's been done to death. A lot of
Mhm.
agents, when you bring out a Venn figure, unfortunately, they say, "Oh, that's Charlie McCarthy. That's been done to death. Don't do that."
Mhm.
And I've had agents even tell me that we like the guy, another ventriloquist they were talking about, but his act is too Charlie McCarthy-ish or Jerry Mahoney-ish.
Mm.
And so I think you need a character that's different. The characters you're making, I complimented on you before the talk here today that they're different and
Mhm.
they look different. They have a different look, a different style. It's a lot of puppets you can nail down by who the owner is, who made the puppet because they have a
Yeah.
certain style of face.
Mhm.
Yours are so different. Each one's different, which is
Oh,
what
thank you.
each one's unique. I have
Mhm.
to really praise you here because
Oh, thank you.
you did a great job.
Yeah, I try to differ the pattern on the head every time or on the body. That way it and I have a range of different sizes of characters that I sell. That way it all, when someone buys a puppet, it's unique to them and their act. So
Well,
I think
I think the puppet has to be different. I think the puppet has to be appealing to an audience.
sure.
Some puppets are just, I don't want to say scary, but they actually are scary to some, especially if you're working for children. You bring out a Venn figure and he says, "Hi." You got 20 people with a laundry problem all of a sudden. You don't want that. You
Right.
make sure your puppets are family friendly, that can be used anywhere. I do like men figures that are different. I had a Don Bryan figure. He made a character named Arthur that I used. He's in Vent
Yes.
Haven right now.
Mhm.
Arthur started out as a lounge character. I didn't do very many lounges. I worked a lounge. It was supposed to be for 4 weeks, and they held me over 15 weeks at this lounge. And Arthur was a drunk at that time.
Okay.
Drinking's kind of fallen out of favor with people. I would bring him
Yeah.
out in the trash can on wheels. He'd be singing the song. I'd take him out of the trash can, bring him out, and he'd do his routine. And we'd pop him back in the can, roll him off at the end of it.
That's an exit.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it was kind of a neat thing. But he
Yeah.
was a John Bryan figure.
Wow. That's super neat. That's super neat. So, could you talk a little bit about now you have Watson with you. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. I had
Okay,
one.
so tell us a little bit about Watson and how he came to be part of your act.
Well, Watson is what you call an off the rack puppet. I don't do that very often. If I see something really unusual, different, and it strikes my and I could use it in the act, I don't want to start another Vent Haven at my house. That's a lot of people do that. They got 40 puppets and they only do one voice or two voices.
Mhm.
So get the puppet that works for you, and make sure you have a good voice that matches up with the puppet. And that's I
Sure.
think very very important. Well, I saw this puppet, and Jet had the puppet at the Van
Mhm.
Haven convention, and I
Yes.
bought the puppet, and we got the rights to the puppet. And that I would always do that if I can get the puppet and get the rights to it. That way, I'm not going to see 10 of the ventriloquists down the road doing the same puppet. That's terrible to go to a town and someone has one of those puppets that looks just identical to one of yours.
Right.
I want something unique. I want different. I want fresh.
Hmm.
This puppet was. He was a rabbit. It's a rabbit puppet, and he's a mess. He's just. he was a mess when you look. You feel sorry for him when you look at him.
But this is an interesting thing because you talked about purchasing the rights for the character. What does that mean when you buy? Because a lot of people think, "Oh, I bought the puppet; it's mine," right? But the rights are something else.
The
So can
right.
you kind of explain what the rights mean when you buy them from a puppet maker?
It's like a photographer that takes your picture. They own the negatives, and you want more pictures, you got to go back to that person. They have to make it for you, make the picture for you. Well, the puppet, same thing. It's the creative genius of that particular puppet maker that made that puppet, and they actually own the rights to that puppet unless you make other plans with them otherwise. And I
Sure.
think that's important to buy the rights. That way, you can do whatever you want with the puppet. And I always go back to the puppet maker. That puppet maker to get a duplicate. That's another thing I always
Mhm.
do. I always get two made. If I'm out on the road doing a show and something would happen, someone would break in and steal the puppet, or something would happen.
Has that happened?
I've had this happen one time. I had a soft puppet called Grits, which is a
Mhm.
hillbilly character I used to use,
Yes.
and I was going through the air. I was on my way to Phoenix, Arizona, and the security people were looking at it. And they, of course, with a puppet, you're always drawn out of line. They want to look at your stuff. They always want to look
Mhm.
at everything. So I brought the puppet out, and the woman goes, "Isn't he cute?" And she stuck her finger in his mouth, and as she came back out with her finger, she ripped the whole bottom row of teeth out. The teeth are hanging like this out of the puppet's mouth. I'm getting
Man.
to board a plane in about 10 minutes. So I called at that time. Marianne Taylor was making puppets for me. I
Mhm.
called Marianne. She says, "Get to the hotel and get some contact cement and paste them until I get the puppet back in my studio."
Yeah.
So we got the puppet back out. It worked. I called maintenance and they brought me the contact cement. We pasted them in. They were okay. It worked. And I got the puppet back to her. But I mean, I didn't have a duplicate at that particular point. That was my fault for not having it. But if I was on the road and something would happen, let's say there's a fire and it would be burned up in a fire, or someone would break into your hotel room and steal it. Jody, I call her on the phone and say, "Can you send number 2 out for me?"
Yeah. No one likes burnt grits.
No, man, no, I'm a northerner. Grits. That way, it's not good. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Well,
anyway, like I said, I always have a duplicate backup.
mhm, definitely. I'm curious, when you travel to do a show, do you have like uh, a bunch of stuff that need in case something were to happen? You talked about a backup puppet. Do you have like a just in case type
I have
bag
an
where got
emergency
stuff?
road case I
Okay.
take with me, a small one. It's got needles and thread with different colored thread. I
Hmm.
can stitch a little bit, but not a lot. And the big thing is a glue gun. Now you have to
Okay.
make sure that the airport security knows you've got a glue gun. It's not a regular gun, a little miniature glue gun. They'll look at it and everything, prove it. And
Right.
you paste something with the glue, in the
Hmm.
mouth or on the body. I had a stitch come out one time. And I glued it together right before a show, and it only takes a few seconds, but it's good to have those kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever I have someone on and I'm interviewing them, and they've crossed paths with Verna as a puppet builder, she's been a big inspiration to me, and I'd love to hear how you met Verna and some of the stuff that she's built for you. You talked about grits.
Where I made the original grits,
Okay.
I was working as a opening act for the country people, and they wanted to have a character that kind of went with the show.
Okay.
And so anyway, I said I wanted this character. I wanted to miss a tooth here, miss a tooth there. He's got to have the beard here, and the funny hat that they would wear down like in the hills.
Yeah.
And I gave him kind of a hillbilly voice a little bit. It was kind of a cross between West Virginia and some other places. And it's kind of like that. How are you, boy? I feel good tonight. Right proud that you called. One of those kind of things. And
Uh-huh.
he used that voice for him. And Garth Brooks absolutely loved him.
Oh, it's so
He
cool.
loved he loved grits. And they liked the name Grits because it was a Yankee talking about grits, so that was kind of fun to them anyway. But it was good.
Yeah, but there's an at the Vinhaven Museum. There's of course the original grits built by Verna, and then there's a photo of her building grits, which I thought is one of my
Right.
favorite photos
That,
of
that
Verna.
was a cover of a puppetry magazine,
Hmm.
and they used that picture on there. And I said, "Look at my puppet on there." Verna, when she first came to the convention, she was brand new,
Hmm.
and she had a representative. She didn't come the first few years. She sent a lady that was selling her puppets for her,
Hmm.
and the lady kept telling everybody, "Well, Verna doesn't want to talk to the ventriloquist or puppeteers. She's very shy. She doesn't want that. You have to work through me." We found out she was jacking the price way up of the puppets and giving Verna just a small percentage of the money that she was the creator of the puppets. So
Oh man.
we kind of blew the lid off that a little bit. What we did was we posted Verna's address and phone number and everything in one of our event magazines at the time. Kind of
Oh,
blew
there you go.
People said, "Well, that wasn't true at all. Verna doesn't mind talking to people,"
Yeah.
and then Verna, we got to be good friends from that point on, and yeah, she's a sweet lady. She's up in her 90s right now. I guess she's moved up north after her husband died. She lived here in Punta Gorda, Florida,
Hmm.
for the longest time.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's super neat. It's always neat to see. Every once in a while, you'll see some of her past creations pop up on eBay or the ventriloquist groups on Facebook, and it's always neat to see
I've got
the
two
impact she's
pictures
made.
that I have in storage right now. I'm not using either one of them, but I got them. I'm keeping my hands on them because they're Verna
Mm.
puppets.
Yeah.
But there's a rabbit in a tuxedo with a
Mhm.
tail coat. His name was Rabbit Redford. And I had Rabbit Redford and I had the duplicate Rabbit Redford. So I got
Uh-huh.
two of them, and she made the tuxedo. I
Oh,
mean,
cool.
the tuxedo.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't find a tuxedo that size.
No, she was multi-talented. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But she was
It's fun.
like for TV and all kinds of special things.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that character. I built a little rabbit puppet, and we put a little red tie on it, and it had these little bug eyes, and I built it for Bob Rumba, and he named it Rabbit Dangerfield.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen that picture. That's
so
a great looking puppet, by the way.
oh,
I'm
thank you.
not partial to rabbits. I've had a couple.
Yeah. Thank you. Um, so we talked about what makes a good puppet. Can you talk about what makes a good character and why there's that difference there?
I think
Because
the
for
look of the
newbies, it's very important.
I think the look of the puppet is half the battle. If the puppet comes out and it's scary looking,
Hmm.
or if the puppet comes out and it doesn't really appeal to the audience, I think it's going to make your routine a lot harder to sell to the audience. I think a good puppet that way makes a big difference.
Hmm.
I had a puppet one time I was using in my school shows. It was kind of it looked like a cross between Elvis and something else. Had a sneer right here a little bit, and
Hmm.
it scared the bejesus out of the little kids in the kindergarten. So I had to dump him after about one or two shows because they were crying. A couple of them cried. I never had a kid
Oh,
cry at my
wow.
show. They cried. They were like preschool, kindergarten age, and I
Yeah.
thought, well, I can't do that. So it was a bully. I was doing an
Okay.
anti-bully show, and the routine was a great routine and fun routine, but didn't work as well with that kind of a puppet. I didn't realize that it had that kind of a sneer would when you turn the face one way, the puppet looked okay. Turn it the other way, it had the sneer. So
Oh.
we had to change that out. So we got another puppet that was just a boy puppet, and we gave him a little bit of an attitude, but they accepted that puppet and they laughed, and the rest of the season was great. It was only one or two shows that happened in, and not one of my proudest moments as a kid show performer, but still, though, you laugh and you learn. You learn by
Sure.
doing. But I think it has to be friendly. I think it has to be visually big enough to be seen for a large stage. I learned that during the county and state fairs. When the mouth opens on an event figure, it opens about that wide. I go,
Uh-huh.
"What's he doing up there? What's going on?" I think he's not moving. I think he's talking. But when the mouth opens really wide like this, like a soft puppet would open up, I think also it gives the illusion of life and
Yeah.
doing things.
That's great
And
a
you
visual.
and you have to play on the stage, you have to do things a little bit bigger than life anyway,
Mm.
because you're
Sure.
not on a big stage, to people.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I had done an interview with Taylor Mason, and he was talking about that's the exact reason why, because he performs at these giant venues, why he had to have his main character Romeo built bigger by Marion Taylor.
Sure.
So you're talking about why it's a big
Plus,
part.
the fact is, when a spotlight hits that puppet,
Hmm.
it's going to absorb that light a little bit. It's
Yeah,
not
it'll walk
shiny
out.
or you cause a glare, so to speak. That's why it absorbs it. If you look at some of the Muppets characters, if you turn a spotlight on them, their face actually absorbs that light and gets a little bit brighter. A bird puppet or something.
Yeah.
So I think it helps that way. I think that helps sell the puppet too. Those are a couple of things I look for in a puppet, and
Okay.
yeah,
That's neat. That's neat. Um, so that's what makes a good puppet, and then a good character is what the ventriloquist does with the puppet and its likability. It's
right,
like kind of that marriage between the what the artist does with the puppet and then what the performer does with the puppet in his act or her act. Yeah,
right,
it's
right.
really neat.
Well,
Um,
the puppet plays into that. You know, you can write the material to something the puppet's wearing, but that can be changed, or you can write it toward his facial expression or facial characteristics.
mhm.
You can kind of tailor those two things together a little bit and kind of come up with a character. It helps when you write something with that in mind.
Sure. Aside from you talked a little bit about the bullet character and how you had to end up switching it out. Did you ever have a character that just didn't work?
Uh, Usually, when I categorize puppets, there's three categories of soft puppets. There are animal puppets, there are
Mhm.
people puppets, and there are object puppets, which are just things. I had a
Okay.
talking ruler one time. The John he had a crown, all that, and it was okay. And the kids went, okay. I
Yeah.
guess that's okay. But with an object puppet, it's harder to sell because it's not something they can identify with. When you're
Okay.
working with kids, the animal puppets are always the best. People are second best, and the object puppets, you usually stick those in the middle of the show somewhere so you can sandwich that in between the really good stuff at the beginning and the end of the show.
Huh. That's interesting. I never even thought about using all of those in one show or using two of three. That's
I
interesting.
use two
Um,
puppets. Like I said, they're the anchors of the show. Start
mm,
with a puppet, end with a puppet. As
okay.
in vaudeville, start strong and finish strong, and the middle will take care of itself. That's what they always said in vaudeville.
Sure, sure. So, like when you introduced Watson to your show,
Mhm.
when you saw that puppet on Jet's table, what? Because I feel like one of the modern problems of beginners or even just Vin Haven goers, Vin Haven convention attendees, is that they'll see a puppet and it's beautiful because there's a plethora of characters to choose from these artists, and they always do an amazing job. And they'll buy it, and then it'll stop there on what they're going to do with it. So,
Right.
what kind of runs through your mind when you see a character? There's that likability of the look, but then script writing wise, or maybe when you're thinking about in the context of a potential show or library type venue,
I think you
what's
have
your
to look at where that puppet's actually going to fit into your show.
mm,
I retired Grits. I
mm,
still have a copy of Grits. I've made 3 or 4 of them, but I
mm-hmm,
retired him. So I took another character that I could actually use some of his material on, which I do with Watson. I don't give him an accent quite, but a little bit of an accent, but just to make it different. But I would try to make the puppet work that way for me. You know, when I bring it out, I don't buy things that I'm not like I said. I'm not starting a Van Haven museum here, so I
mm-hmm.
don't buy puppets that are going to sit on a shelf or say, "Well, that's my puppet. I want you to sit," and you go, "Hi, how you doing?" Put it back on the shelf, and then you're done with it.
Right.
They got to be working puppets. I sell the ones that I don't use anymore
Mm-hmm.
because I want working puppets that are going to help my career and help me make some money, hopefully.
Sure. Could we meet Watson?
Yeah, Watson's down here on the
Oh,
floor. Excuse me just a second for doing this,
sure.
but he's down here. Let me get him out. Oh, come here, Watson. There we go. This is what. Hi, how are you, Landon boy? You doing okay?
Hey, how's it going? Thank
Good.
you for being part of this.
You got all dressed up to come here tonight? Shirt on, tie? Yeah, cause there's no pants, Snoopy.
Now, this is interesting. He didn't have you added that to the character. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, I'm using him for a lot. I'm doing talks. I use him for adult groups, believe it or not. Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I use him for Rotary clubs and whatnot. I'm doing talks, and I wanted to look like a businessman. Eventually, what I was going to do with this guy, but I was going to use him as a puppet that was a salesperson, and so I gave him a shirt and tie. I want to dress him up just a little bit for those kind of things. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So anyway,
That's
I
super funny.
nicely that way, so you can see what it looks like. But I mean, just the eyes, so
Mhm.
a little tuft of hair on the top, at the top
Sure.
there, and just the whole look. And so I had a shirt made, and I had a shirt and a tie. And the tie, actually, you're gonna laugh when I tell you about the tie. They sell clothes for dogs to dress them up.
Uh-huh.
I found this tie that you put on a little dog when you dress them up and take them out. That was the perfect size tie. So instead of having my tie made, I bought that tie and they added the tie to the shirt. But it's a
Oh,
short.
that's great.
Yeah, it's good, huh?
Yeah.
It's good.
That's super neat. Yeah, I was in a pet store the other day, and I thought some of these dog costumes would be great for puppets. So it's
That's
amazing what you can find to customize the character, and even if you get a stock character from a manufacturer, you can add clothing or eyelashes, or you can have stuff added to it to make it your own, to
I
put it in your
I
show.
want to add this extra dimension to Watson just a little bit.
Hmm.
Dimension. Yeah, it's hard to say. I know. Anyway, like I said, I use Watson for those Rotary clubs. I talk about different things. I have a business talk I do. Yeah,
Sure.
and I've been using him that way. So that's Watson. That's neat.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing him out. He's a great character. I love all of the.
Put you down. You usually do. Okay, here we go down here. Ouch. Put him right back in the case. There we go.
Well, that's interesting. So, you've taught ventriloquism in classes
Yes.
to people. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's a very neat experience.
Well, I've taught in Japan. I've taught in Canada. I've taught in Great Britain. I've taught in all those places where I've lectured and across the United States. And I teach what's called the vent basics, which is breathing and the tongue placement in the mouth on the
Hmm.
alveolar ridge, and how to articulate by going up and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that way. And I'm not much on the clenched teeth. Hi, how you doing? I'm not that kind of ventriloquist. So your mouth has to be open a little tiny bit to be natural.
Right.
I give them some pointers and lessons that way, and we get them started. That's going to be up to them to take the ball and run with it after that. But I think we can get them off to a good start by giving them some of the basic things that they can practice on at home.
Sure. That's great. How did the first workshop like that begin for you? Where did that come from?
Well, let's see, which time? I was probably at a Van Haven convention years ago. In the early
Okay.
days, they didn't have an executive director that was actually in charge of everything. They changed it every year. You had a chairman that ran the convention. And one
Hmm.
of the chairmen in the early days asked me to teach that because I've been a working pro. In fact, I've been a working pro for almost 40 years. So anyway, like I said, it was fun to do it. Look through my lessons, look at the things that I learned, and I learned through the Mayer course. The Mayer I thought was the best course out there, and I also combined it a little bit with Paul Stadelman's Ventriloquism Up to Date book that's still available. I think Abbott's Magic carries it. I think
Okay.
it's a great book. It's got some good points. So between the two of those, I came in. In fact, I did the Mayer course twice. I had the original Mayer course, which was done in mimeograph form.
Hmm.
A friend of mine bought a magic shop and found that course in there and gave it to me. And the second one was from Clinton Detweiler. I took it. So I actually took the Mayer course twice, and I took
Oh,
that
wow.
Stalin course.
Hmm.
So it's worth it. You just got to teach them the basics. You can't overcrowd them. It's like teaching anything else. You don't want to give them too many things at once because there's a lot of fine points to it. You learn the
Sure.
basics of building a house. Your foundations are good. You build on
Hmm.
top of that, build up and up and up.
Sure.
That's
And
what.
right now, Tom Krell has a wonderful resource, Learn Dash Ventriloquism.
Yes,
And I've signed up for that, and he has done an amazing job with everything that he's included in that course.
Tom did a great job with
Um,
his
yeah,
course as well. It wasn't available when I started out. So
mhm,
yeah.
yeah. And he also runs the IVS, the International Ventriloquist Society, and
Right.
you do a running column on there. Could you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about
I
that?
write for Tom and that for the magazine, and he's
Hmm.
doing a lot of video stuff and written articles. And we kind of balance. He kind of balances it out. Actually, when I was in charge of Mayor, and when Clinton Detweiler died, I took over Mayor, and I brought Tom and Ken Groves in as partners. Well, still got busy with shows and whatnot, so I asked Tom. I said, "Would you like to have Mayor Studio?" So I bequeathed it to Tom. So he's got the whole Mayor Studio to himself now. And he's doing a great job with it.
Yeah, he really is. It really is. So that's interesting. We talked a little bit about convention. How did you become the executive director?
I think we drew straws, got lost. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
anyway. Uh, what happened was I've been on the advisory board since 1977. I came on with Johnny Main
Okay.
and came on the board with Johnny Main and with Clinton Detweiler. We were recommended to John Brooking, who was president of the museum at that time, by Bill Boley. Bill Boley was a good friend of ours, and he introduced us to that.
Hmm.
And what they did in those, like I said, the early days, they switched around chairman. One chairman would be 1 year, next another advisor would be a chairman another year. And I did 11 of those. Well, there was a couple years there we didn't have a convention back in like the late 90s. They
Hmm.
went out to Las Vegas and they did a Las Vegas version of the convention, although we had nothing to do with it. It was all Las Vegas's stuff at that time.
Sure.
Anyway, John Brooking calls me back and he said, I want to get this started back up here with our local convention. Will you take it over? I said, I'll take it over on two conditions. Number one, we no more chairman. I'm the executive director and I make all the decisions on this. Number two, that I have free reign to hire or fire who I want to put in these things. He said, agreed. So we signed, and I've been now 20, I think it's 21 years I've been the executive director of the convention. You would have thought I got it right by now, wouldn't you?
Well, that's superb. What was it like? What was it like taking this on for the first year that you had?
Scary because
Yeah.
it's we were starting with nothing. I mean, we started ground zero. We had nothing here. We had to build up. I remember the early days of the convention started in 1975. I think we had like 80 people. So
Okay.
it was like, gosh, it'd be great if we could get up to 100. And now we got up to about between 500 and 600 every year.
Yeah.
And they're coming from last year was 17 countries, I think.
Wow.
So
Phenomenal.
you try to make it educational but yet fun. A place
Hmm.
for the viewers to get in there and do their thing. A place for people to learn and have fun. And we have to keep this convention going because it's the future of ventriloquism. If we can keep on
Definitely.
with young people coming up to the ranks, but excuse me, we got to train this all the way through.
Definitely. I definitely agree. Um, and of course, this year's convention, International Event Haven Ventriloquist Convention, was canceled due to the um, current coronavirus. But could you talk a little bit about next year's dates and
Yeah.
what we have planned? What's planned for that?
Well, this year was canceled because they were going to quarantine everybody coming into Kentucky for 14 days, which
Hmm.
doesn't work. And also, only 50 people or less could meet. I don't know what I was supposed to do with those other 450 or 500 people milling around, but
Hmm.
so those two factors are ones that kind of drove us out for not doing it. Well, anyway, like I said, our convention dates, I already have a signed contract with the Holiday Inn for 2021 anyway. The dates are July 14 to 17, 2021 at the Cincinnati Airport Holiday Inn. Same
Okay.
location. And we're going to take a lot of things off the 2020 calendar that we didn't get in this year. But then we got some new things we're going to add. It's going to be a mixture of some new and some old things, old being things that we couldn't get in this year. So it's going to be a little
Hmm.
combination of both. And we're still in the planning stages. We're going to come out and start taking registrations in October. I think October 15th is our fire off date when we get started.
Okay. Phenomenal. Great. So are some of the lectures and some of the acts? I mean, I know I'm sure it's all still up in the air, but are they scheduled to push to next year, or is it kind of TBD?
I'd like to bring Willie Tyler back, and he's going to come back and do his thing for us and
Hmm.
um,
That'd be
whatnot.
great.
Well, right now, what we're doing for this July 18th, which would have been our Saturday night show in 2020, we're
Hmm.
going to do about 3 hours of some special things as kind of a placeholder to kind of keep people still interested in it. We're going to
Hmm.
do a couple lectures. We're going to do a couple, 2 or 3 interviews. One's with Darcy Lynn. Hopefully, we're going to get Jeff involved, and we're going to also get Willie involved with that.
Sure.
And Ben Haven's going to do a virtual tour. You're going to see all the new things that they've added to the museum since last year. It's going to be like
Oh,
a tour, except it's going to be a virtual tour.
yeah. That'll be neat. That'll
Yeah,
be
I
neat.
think it'll be really fun.
That's awesome. Well, you everyone that knows of you, Mark Wade, knows of your wife Jody, and she's just a ray of sunshine at the convention. can you tell us a little bit about how you met? And she's a performer, so could you talk about that and
She
what
is,
that's been like?
she is a professional clown par excellence.
Hmm.
And she does juggling and magic and no ventriloquism. She's one ventriloquist in the family is plenty. And anyway, we met years ago, probably 20 years ago, at a variety arts conference, the old Laugh Makers conferences that they used to have. I was teaching there and
Yeah.
performing, and so we met, and things kind of hit it off, and we went on, and we started talking on the phone, then we went to dating, and then we got married. So we've been
Mhm.
married now 14. It's going on 14 years.
Wow.
But yeah, so but she's does a great job. She's been my right hand person when it comes to doing school shows and whatnot. She can do the contracts. She can do all that paperwork. I don't use her all the time for that. I try to do that myself. But when we're out doing a show, for example, if I'm in and I have to see the principal, get some things done in the building,
Mhm.
she'll have I'll have everything out of the car. She'll have the show set up and ready for me. I walk out and the backdrop's up, the curtains are there, the tables and props, everything's in order the way I need it. Don't have to
Sure.
worry about any of that. So she's really good at. And I helped her in her shows, although she likes doing her own thing.
Mhm.
So I
Well,
know I don't know too much about clowning, unfortunately.
what's interesting about your relationship is that, from what I've seen in certain circumstances with performers that are on the road, is that they'll have clashes within their relationship with their spouse because their spouse doesn't understand how much they're on the road, or maybe how many shows, or what that real life is. And what's neat with Jody is she understands that, and she helps you with it.
Right.
And she's on that same wavelength. So
She
that's
goes
really
with
neat.
me. I mean, there's no one's at home, one's on the road. We're both on.
Mhm.
We get up in the morning. We have a list of shows we're supposed to do that week, and she goes out with me, and we do them. That's
Wow, that's
nice to have somebody to talk
phenomenal.
to and somebody to share things with on the road, and we share a lot of experiences. And she has a lot of good things to input into this because she's been a performer for about 21 or 22 years herself. I forget
Mhm.
how many years now, but at
Wow.
least 20.
That's phenomenal. And wrapping up, I'm curious, what do you hope to see from the future of ventriloquism and from future events?
Well, you are part of that future. I
Oh,
want
thank you.
want guys like you and girls like you, people that are coming up through the ranks. We've got to keep our future bright, and we do that by educating, showing them we're not going to hang it all on the past. It's not all about ventriloquists in 1930. They don't care about that. But it's got to be something modern, but it's got to be unique and different and show people that there's actually a future in ventriloquism. I mean, there can be a good career in ventriloquism if it's handled right. And you got to be, remember, they say show business is two words, show and business.
Mhm.
So you have to learn to do the show first, then the business comes later, and you have to be as good a business person to keep in this situation. But I think with guys like you and other people like you that are young coming up through, I think we're in good hands. I really feel we are in good hands.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you so much for being a part of Landon Live and for sharing your story.
You bet, Len. I enjoyed this immensely. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thank you guys for tuning in.